Through the thick winter coats, we seemed like two clumsy penguins. His fingers traced along the hem, touching my skin with a cool sensation. I'm afraid I can no longer openly say that Henry and I aren't what they think we are. The night before the Mid-Autumn Festival in 2003, Henry invited me to Shanghai. That day, he asked me out for dinner. Although I was happy, I had to decline. It was the busiest time in the mall before the festival, and there was no time for a meal. After the mall closed, after inventory, I finally squeezed through the back door into the city night with my sore waist. The neon lights adorned the city brilliantly. I looked up, trying to distinguish the shape of the moon from the crowded neon lights. A large, round moon hung alone above, like a duck egg yolk. Lily. Henry's car appeared out of nowhere, stopping in front of me. Let's go, have supper. I hesitated for a moment but got into the car. There was a pleasant scent of cologne inside the car. Is the company not busy these days? I asked him. Henry smiled ambiguously without answering. He took me to a street famous for spicy crab, where the line was already over an hour long. I waved my hand, I'm too tired. Just take me home. Henry said, skip one meal, and you want to abandon me like this? I looked at him in confusion. He just smiled, pulling me out of the line, let's go for hot pot. I stumbled along, and my eyes involuntarily moved to our interlocked hands. It wasn't until we sat down that he let go of my hand. The hot pot restaurant was filled with steam. I looked at Henry across the table as he focused on ordering. His fair face blushed slightly, and he gently lifted his eyelids to look at me. Should I just order for myself? I nodded, non-committal. Henry always overestimated my appetite when ordering. There was a pile of meat, but few vegetables. While he cooked the meat, he casually said, I didn't get the promotion in the recent group competition. I heard. He paused, you're not going to comfort me? With so many confidants, do you need my comfort? He paused again and then laughed. A headhunting company approached me for a position in Shanghai, he said after a moment. I've agreed to it. Henry was decisive and had the ability and skills. He became the marketing director of the branch at the age of 30, but in recent years, there had been no further promotion. It was understandable. In the corporate struggle, it wasn't just about capability, personal connections were also important criteria. Which brand? I asked. Muchong, he said, they produce women's shoes. Due to non-competition agreements, the choices are limited. I hesitated for a moment, raised my glass, and said, well, I wish you a bright future. I almost handed the beer glass to him, but he didn't take it. His eyes were fixed on me, and through the rising steam, I felt that his eyes were also moist. Come with me, what do you think? He suddenly asked. I almost spilled the cup shaking in my hand, giving away my intention to add more to the hot pot. Why me? I asked. Henry put down the chopsticks and asked seriously, don't you want to? I didn't say anything. If not you, who else could it be? He said. I can't find anyone more suitable than you in the entire company. Our backgrounds are similar, our situations are similar. We've climbed up from the bottom to where we are now. I've always felt that you are the person who understands me the most in this world. Do you know why I chose you among so many people when running for the store manager position? Because of my outstanding performance. He smiled. Good performance is one thing, but there's another important reason. What you desire in your eyes is the same as mine. What's the point of being a store manager in the mall? If you're willing to go to Shanghai with me, I can promise you an immediate promotion to sales supervisor, with a threefold increase in salary. How about it? Consider it. Without discussing the position, just the prospect of tripling the salary was tempting enough. I instinctively lowered my head. As I gazed at the boiling pot, it seemed as if I could see the bubbling life that awaited me in the future. Naturally, there was a lot of hot pot left. As we left, he packed 2 portions of cooked meatballs. Take them home for Xiao Wang. Xiao Wang was his dog, a giant-sized Samoyed. I once asked Henry why he named it Xiao Wang. He said it was easier to take care of that way. After dinner, he drove me home. When we were near my place, he turned on the car's roof light and took out a box of mooncakes from the back seat. The box was exquisite, with intricate patterns that penetrated from the surface to the depths, forming a 3-dimensional rose pattern. Is it past midnight? He asked after stopping the car. I checked the time, it was 12:05. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, he said. I smiled, same to you. Try it. He opened the mooncake box. I was quite full, but seeing his insistence, I reluctantly peeled off the exquisite shell. In an instant, the sweet taste of the mooncake filled the confined space, a rose flavor. I took a reluctant bite and was about to put it away. Henry leaned over, took a gentle bite of the unfinished mooncake in my hand. So sweet, he looked up, with mooncake crumbs lingering on the corners of his lips, his pupils dark and sparkling. He smiled and repackaged the remaining mooncakes. This way, you won't give the mooncakes to someone else. With that, he handed the rewrapped box to me. I held the box. He chuckled, "You're very calm." Perhaps I was calm. But maybe not at all. "I'll go to Shanghai with you," I heard myself say. I heard that everyone at the company was surprised when they learned I was leaving. They all seemed to have the same question, why me? Henry, charming and popular throughout the company, attracted a considerable number of admirers due to his outstanding appearance and demeanor. Only Cora, who was genuinely happy for me, truly celebrated my decision. As the company's executive assistant, she had helped me a lot when I first joined the company. Due to our similar ages, we had developed a special connection. Before I left, she came to help me pack my bags. Seeing my simple and shabby room, she turned away to wipe a tear from the corner of her eye, thinking I hadn't noticed. "Leaving is a good thing," she said. "You won't have to commute by subway and bus every day." I smiled. "What if I end up living even farther in Shanghai?" "Can't you treat yourself better?" she questioned. I pinched her fair cheek and said, "I'll try." She laughed, her eyes crescent-shaped. "I have to admit, Henry has a good eye." Her tone was quite ambiguous. I looked at her seriously. "My relationship with Henry is not what everyone imagines." She was initially smiling, but seeing my serious expression, she also became more restrained. "I know. Remember to clarify for me." Although I said this, I didn't really care. Even if I explained, no one would believe it. Besides, I was about to start a new life. When I first arrived in Shanghai, I felt quite uncomfortable. The wind here felt damp on the face, unlike the dry wind in Beijing or the climate in my hometown, Jiangxi. Upon hearing about my job change to Shanghai, my parents back in my hometown didn't express any dissatisfaction. Over the phone, I could sense their excitement when they heard about the threefold salary increase. This meant I could send more money back home. But this threefold salary increase was not easy to get. Upon entering the new company, the group gave me a warning, stating a 3-month probationary period before a formal position. Although Henry was already the brand director, the personnel department handled the matter of formal positions. Since I had joined, I had no bargaining power for conditions, and it wouldn't be appropriate for him to advocate for me. I understood him. Although I understood him, the company didn't seem willing to give me a chance. I wasn't assigned to the Muchong brand where Henry worked, but rather to another women's shoe brand within the group, Susia. The director of Susia, Violet, was a woman over 40, a local Shanghainese. She spoke Mandarin very well but had a habit of not looking at people when talking. Our first encounter was in the restroom. Henry had introduced her to me, so I recognized her and greeted her proactively. Without even looking at me, she made a dismissive sound from her nose and said, "In the future, you should wear shoes from our group." With that, she walked out, wearing a pair of matte camel-colored high heels. I looked down at my own shoes, a plain pair of black high heels. I couldn't even recall the brand. The day after our first encounter, she asked to talk to me. By then, I had been with the company for almost 2 weeks, and it seemed like she suddenly remembered my existence. "I heard from Henry that you are very capable," she said without lifting her eyes from the documents she was holding. "Being capable is one thing, but the categories are different. Originally, you were in charge of bags, and now it's women's shoes. You need time to adapt, and the group is giving you that opportunity." I remained silent. The sales department is not short of talent as the group has developed to this point. Placing you directly as a sales supervisor overseeing more than 10 stores might be hard to convince others, and it won't be beneficial for your work. Learn more at the grassroots level first, and then we can discuss the formal position. After saying this, she signed her name on the document and then looked up, giving me a smile. This was the first time she looked at me directly. Her smile resembled Lu Jialing. But I couldn't smile. She seemed intentionally trying to push me away. "This is different from what you promised initially," I said as calmly as possible. Violet's lips curved into a mocking smile. "I never promised you anything. If someone promised you, go find them." I knew there was nothing wrong with what she said. So, I went to Henry. Henry comforted me, "Don't worry, I'll talk to her." However, things didn't improve. Instead, they took a different direction, sliding downhill all the way. At that time, Shanghai had just established the regional central warehouse for the East China region. The system was not yet in place, and there was a tense relationship between sales and warehouse management. Violet directly transferred me to the warehouse department, not even giving me a chance to work on the front lines of sales. Henry apologized to me, saying, "It seems like I've misled you." The early winter evening sky was hazy, and the air carried the lingering scent of osmanthus from the autumn days. Dragging my luggage, I moved to a neighborhood close to the warehouse. The neighborhood was dilapidated, probably standing for a decade or more. The walls were mottled and yellowed, and the outdated aluminum alloy windows seemed ready to fall in the wind. Henry carried my incredibly large quilt bag and walked ahead. Throughout the journey, he didn't say much to me. It seemed to me that he might be more frustrated than I was. The house was old, but it was clean. I shared it with a girl who worked at the nearby electronics factory. After helping me tidy up, Henry went to the neighborhood entrance and bought some barbecue and beer. My room had a balcony. We dragged 2 chairs onto the balcony, sat there, and watched the moon rise slowly. The cool moonlight bathed us in its serene glow. I said, looking at the evening sky, "I thought there might be no moon tonight." Henry tilted his head back to drink beer, and the prominent Adam's apple moved up and down as he swallowed. "We've been tricked," he said indignantly. "Do you regret coming to Shanghai with me?" Saying that I didn't regret it would be a lie. Now, not only did I not get the promised threefold salary increase, but I also lost the position of a store manager. I swallowed the bitter beer, and the chilly liquid gave me a shiver. "I've been used as a tool by the boss to balance Violet," he said with a bitter smile. "The situation on your end was initially settled, but Violet intervened, so..." I remained silent. Muchong is still in the early stages, and the road is not easy. Wait until I stabilize, and we'll discuss your situation. He looked at me, his eyes reflecting the clear moonlight and a silent promise. I smiled and said, "Okay." We didn't finish the barbecue, and there was still half a bottle of beer left. Before leaving, Henry hugged me. Through the thick winter clothes, we seemed like 2 clumsy penguins. His fingers slipped along the hem of my coat, touching my skin, which felt cool. I took a sharp breath. He leaned down, sealing my lips with a deep kiss. I was almost out of breath. Where his fingers touched felt like igniting a fire, and my body swayed between the cold and the burn. At that moment, a thought involuntarily entered my mind. I was afraid I could no longer tell Cora with peace of mind that Henry and I were not what they imagined. I called her, but the line was busy. It's better not to answer. I involuntarily became an ostrich. Sitting on the balcony, I finished the remaining beer. I remembered the first time I met Henry when he visited our store. Back then, I was just an ordinary salesperson who had been working for a month. He checked the sales performance of several bags, and without checking the computer, I told him the results. At that time, I almost stayed in the store every day, the earliest to arrive and the latest to leave. I was more familiar with the inventory than anyone else. Later, during the election for the store manager, he cast his votes for me. He asked me, "Why are you working so hard?" I smiled and said, "You keep saying my name." He looked puzzled. "Lily." "Yes." I nodded. "I'm the second oldest in my family of 7 children, 6 girls and 1 boy. I have no retreat." I will never forget the shocked look in his eyes at that moment. I said seriously, "I have no way out." After a while, he said, "In my family, I'm the son added later. I have 3 older sisters. The whole family hopes for my success, and like you, I have no retreat." Perhaps Henry was not wrong, we were so similar. Because of our similarities, we understood each other and sought warmth in each other. At this moment, he needed me, and I couldn't retreat. The moon rose higher and higher, farther and farther. Like me, it had no retreat. Carrying the title of warehouse supervisor, I officially started my new job. The 3-month probation period was in name only. I couldn't return to the position of sales supervisor, so I had to face this challenge head-on. After officially joining, I realized why Henry could help me secure the position of warehouse supervisor. To accommodate relatives and friends, the warehouse employed people who were once acquaintances from the boss's village. The average age was around 50. They were not proficient in computer skills, lacked management awareness, and, when faced with problems, would not do anything other than shirk responsibility. For such a prominent brand, the warehouse department was surprisingly stagnant and outdated. I was shocked. It felt like I was thrown into an abandoned area where every corner needed cleaning, and every piece of trash had to be turned into treasure. The work was challenging, primarily due to the language barrier. They liked to communicate in dialects regardless of the time or place. The soft-spoken Wu dialect sounded pleasant, but I couldn't understand a single word. The former acting warehouse supervisor, a 55-year-old man, took the lead in ostracizing me. Seeing that I couldn't speak their dialect or understand, he often spoke ill of me in front of me. His tone and expression didn't need understanding, it was clear. But I couldn't get angry, and I certainly couldn't give up. I tried to keep myself in a stable emotional state and focused on the work. Inventory, inspection, system organization, I was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. The goods were in disorder, and the rules and regulations were virtually non-existent. Cases of missing items occurred from time to time, and I had to personally check everything to feel assured. I also took this opportunity to familiarize myself with the products. In less than 2 months, I already knew more about the products and inventory than those who had been in the warehouse for several years. Approaching the Chinese New Year, Henry came to the warehouse to find me, and I was still immersed in handling the goods. He asked, "Are you going home for the New Year?" Without stopping my work, I replied, "Probably not. This won't do." He held my hand. "You need to learn how to delegate tasks. You can't pour all of yourself into it." I smiled. "You can't get fat in one breath. I have to take it step by step." Henry fell silent. I understood his silence, which was helpless. There was nothing he could do to help me. Muchong's sales have increased. "Is everything going smoothly on your end?" I asked. "How do you know?" "I can check the inventory." I laughed. He laughed along. I breathed a long sigh. Things at hand are getting smoother. Next is to get them to follow the rules and regulations. The boss used to turn a blind eye to many things, so they developed this indifferent work attitude. I neatly arranged the shoes I had just organized and said calmly, "But I'm different. I have no relationship with them, and I'm not afraid of offending anyone." "Do you need me to do anything?" Henry asked. "Not for now," I said. With the year-end assessment approaching, being the department head, I naturally held the power of life and death over the department's staff. But I couldn't be too soft or too harsh. Being soft would make people think I'm easy to bully, and being too harsh might lead to a big issue. I only gave low scores to a few overly lax individuals, and for the rest, I applied for their year-end assessments as usual. As for the acting warehouse supervisor, Parker, who had been undermining me, I even applied for additional year-end bonuses for him. To ingratiate and divide. I wanted to test how deep this pool was. The HR department initially had doubts about my assessment, as Parker had always given everyone high scores in the past. Therefore, my assessment form was submitted to the boss. Later, Henry told me that the boss had privately consulted him for opinions and ultimately decided to respect my assessment scores. Although Henry casually mentioned it, I knew he must have worked hard to mediate and support me. Otherwise, things wouldn't have gone so smoothly. After the year-end assessments were completed, before the internal reactions could unfold, the Chinese New Year arrived. This wasn't my first time spending the Spring Festival away from home. Whether I went home or not was something no one cared about, as long as the money arrived on time. The girl I shared the apartment with packed her bags and went home a few days early, making the 2-bedroom apartment suddenly feel much emptier. On the day of the holiday eve, also known as Little New Year's Eve, people suddenly had free time, and it felt a bit strange. I cleaned the entire apartment thoroughly, and after finishing, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the balcony, lost in thought. The afternoon sun was exceptionally warm, bathing everything in a comforting glow. As I started to doze off, a knock on the door interrupted my quiet time. Opening the door, I saw Henry standing outside, raising his hand with 2 large bags of snacks and drinks, offering me a slight smile. I stood there, momentarily speechless. "Can I come in?" He raised an eyebrow. I asked him, "Didn't you already go home?" Henry put down the bags, smiling. "I wanted to spend an extra day with you, so I rescheduled my flight for tomorrow." Seeing me still in a daze, he pretended to be annoyed. "Aren't you going to hug me?" I walked over, burying my head in his clothes, feeling the warmth. He also brought a pair of couplets. We cooperated to hang them up, then washed our hands together to make dumplings. As the sun set, the cold crept in. I turned up the air conditioner, trying to make the room a bit warmer. Unfortunately, the aging air conditioner only produced a roaring sound, offering little warmth. I'm starting to miss central heating right now. I glanced at Henry's thick down jacket and smiled. He chuckled, grabbing my hand and rubbing it vigorously, asking, "Is it warmer now?" I felt like we were two little mice from an animated film, huddling in a corner, seeking warmth. Early the next morning, he rushed to the airport, leaving the apartment empty once again. I spent almost the entire day staring into space, finished the dumplings we made with Henry the day before, turned on the TV to watch the Spring Festival Gala, and fell asleep before reaching the unforgettable tonight. This is how the Chinese New Year goes. After the Chinese New Year, things began to ferment, and there were some minor changes within the department. More people became willing to take initiative, and naturally, some of the routine tasks in my hands were delegated. Parker threw me cold glances, but it wasn't as targeted as before. At least now, he would speak Mandarin in front of me. Though the changes were subtle, I could feel them. I knew that all of this was inseparable from Henry's support within the company. Not everyone in a position could gain corresponding power. With this foundation, I smoothly implemented the previously organized workflow. However, I was well aware that this was just the beginning. In early March, on a rainy day, Violet suddenly called me and asked me to visit her office. I grabbed a black umbrella and headed out into the drizzling rain. March in Shanghai was bone-chilling, and my cotton-padded coat felt like it had just been pulled out of the water, clinging damply to my body. After 2 subway rides and 1 bus ride, I finally arrived at Violet's office. Sweat had started to bead on my back. Violet was already waiting in her office, and across from her was Jackson, the merchandise manager who I recognized. She was usually responsible for product scheduling, and I coordinated with her quite often. When we were inventorying the products, we found a serious discrepancy between the store's goods and the accounts. The issue of missing shoes has been going on for a while. As the warehouse manager, how have you been managing this? Violet spoke with an imposing manner, leaving me no time to catch my breath. The problem of missing goods had existed for a long time, and I had also noticed it, even though I meticulously organized the inventory. The situation persisted. Jackson had a stern face. The store haphazardly ships goods. Clearly, they ship style A, but when she accounts for it, she writes down style B. During warehouse exchanges, they don't check thoroughly, leading to such oversights. It turned out that Jackson was also here to be criticized, but now she was trying to shift the blame onto me. I said, if there was a system, this problem would be easily solved. But now there's no system, and all the accounts rely on manual recording. Violet, as you know, human factors are the most uncontrollable. Violet sneered, so, you mean to say this problem is the company's fault, and you're not to blame? I was about to explain but was cut off by her. The boss got really angry yesterday. Now, either you quickly handle this matter or pack up and leave. Let someone who can handle this take over. Don't rush to complain to Henry either. People, in the end, have to rely on themselves to stand firm. With that, she walked out of the office, leaving Jackson and me with frozen faces, both silent. Back in the warehouse, I went through the details of the process again and visited more than a dozen stores. Only then did I discover the root of the problem. The reason why stores were shipping style A but writing down style B was that everyone wanted to keep the good products for their own store sales and were reluctant to let them circulate among other stores. As the warehouse served as the hub for circulation, the receiving process was not careful, and there wasn't enough time to check thoroughly, leading to discrepancies. Over time, this naturally resulted in severe losses. To solve this problem, the receiving process in my warehouse department was, of course, a necessary step. However, it was far from enough. If the sales department insisted on such operations, we didn't have any means to balance it out. In the end, it was because of loopholes in the system, and the sales profession was naturally inclined to exploit those loopholes. I tried to communicate with the sales manager but was met with disappointment. The sales managers with better attitudes would complain to me. We've always been very rule-abiding here. Our accounts are neat and clear. We've always been honest workers. But when it comes to transferring goods, some people start making things difficult. Who doesn't want to keep the good selling items for themselves? They just bully us honest people. You can't be like this. Everyone wants to achieve good results, right, Lily? Encountering those with a bad attitude would directly rebuke me. I manage more than a dozen stores. Should I go to each one and monitor their accounts? They can't possibly report everything to me. They said it so confidently, leaving me speechless. Time flew by, and it was already the end of April. The group was gearing up for the mid-year conference, but I was still at a loss. Seeing me in a state of anxiety, Parker seemed somewhat pleased but didn't reveal it too obviously. He just said to me, "I heard the group has acquired a new brand, and the boss wants Violet to oversee it." The newly acquired brand was a high-end line, considered a tempting opportunity by many. Everyone wanted to take a bite. The boss's view of Violet is quite clear, Parker concluded with a hint of mockery in his eyes. In the first half of the year, the sales of Muchong were mediocre, and the overall brand performance was not eye-catching. Some stores were even facing the risk of closure. If the new brand fell into Violet's hands, Henry's position in the company would become delicate. Thinking about this, I couldn't help but furrow my brow. Everyone in the group knew that Henry and I were connected. Last time, when Violet made it clear that she wanted to kick me out, if it came to that, it would be a severe blow to Henry. In the evening, I called Henry. He didn't answer. I brewed a cup of calming tea for myself and drank it before going to sleep. During the night, my stomach churned like straw, and I woke up bathed in cold sweat. I crawled to the toilet, emptying my stomach completely. Coincidentally, the girl next door had just finished her night shift and arrived home. Seeing me hunched over the toilet, she was startled. "Your complexion is really frightening." I struggled to lift my body and, looking in the mirror, saw a deathly pale face with no trace of color. "Do you need to go to the hospital?" she suggested. After some consideration, I took a taxi to the hospital. While hooked up to the 4, I still occasionally felt nauseous, but my mind was calmer than ever before. Enduring until dawn, after finishing the 4, I returned home feeling slightly better. Deciding to take a day off, I spent the entire day lying in bed. The phone kept ringing with many people trying to reach me, but conspicuously absent was Henry. Not until I returned to work after my sick leave did Henry finally return my call. As it turned out, he was on a business trip to Beijing. He asked, "Is everything okay?" "Nothing. Gastritis wasn't such a big deal," I replied. "Are you okay?" He chuckled softly. "What trouble could I have?" Hearing his laughter, I suddenly felt a weight lifted from my heart, and I felt much more at ease. The matter of missing goods certainly couldn't stand still. Since gentle persuasion didn't work, I had to find a way to counterbalance the situation. If there were no means of counterbalance, then I needed to create them. I conducted a detailed survey of the sales of dozens of stores in Shanghai, compiled their respective best-selling and slow-moving items, and created a proposal to discuss with Jackson. "What's this?" Jackson asked. "I've created a new allocation plan based on the actual sales of each store for your reference," I explained. Jackson took it with a hint of suspicion, carefully reviewing the plan. I continued, with sales departments blaming each other and no one willing to admit mistakes or missing goods. When it comes to fines, they either blame the products or the warehouse. I thought we should start from the distribution side and use new items to counterbalance. "So, you mean if they don't cooperate with merchandise distribution, deliberately withholding goods, we won't allocate the current season's new items," he clarified. I nodded. For store managers, who wouldn't want the latest items? In this way, the verification process in our warehouse will be much easier. Using new items as leverage will also reduce the workload, I explained. Surprisingly, when the new allocation plan was implemented, sales managers and store managers were in chaos. They rushed to the company to report Jackson, accusing her of breaking the rules. However, after a month of trial, the accounts and goods matched. Even those store managers with low cooperation had to bow their heads, as everyone hoped to get the new items for better performance. Taking advantage of the situation, I proposed an allocation plan for previous season's items to Jackson. The format of the stores was constantly changing, and with my frequent visits, I naturally gained a lot of insights. This shopping mall should have more A items, that one should have more B items. Over time, someone gave me the nickname the calculator, and even the higher-ups in the company heard about it. At the end of July, the acquisition of the new brand was completed, and Jackson was transferred to be the merchandise manager. The position of the merchandise manager for the Susia brand became vacant. A few days later, the group issued a notice about my job transfer. On July 29th, the day before my birthday, I was transferred to be the merchandise manager for the Susia brand. People in the department congratulated me, and Parker said, "Clearly, it's a promotion." "Lily, why do you look so unhappy?" Of course, I was happy. I called Henry, wanting to celebrate with him. Henry said, "Tomorrow, it's your birthday." With the department urging us on, I decided to invite everyone to dinner. I chose a hot pot restaurant, lively and less likely to have dietary disagreements. "Today, everyone is allowed to have a little drink," I said. Upon hearing this, a few alcohol-loving colleagues swiftly brought over 2 boxes of beer, making everyone laugh. The hot pot bubbled in the center of the round table. Whether it was due to alcohol or heat, everyone's faces turned rosy. I said, "Normally, I'm quite strict at work. I know it's not easy for everyone to tolerate me, so thank you all." Someone quipped, "You're too modest." "You're more than just strict," eliciting laughter from the group. I joined in the laughter. Parker sat next to me and, clearing his throat, said, "You should smile like this more often, you look much better when you smile." I asked, "Don't I smile normally?" He said, "Your usual expression is not a smile." "What is it then?" "It's called endurance." He chuckled, "It's either enduring through, or enduring against." I raised the corners of my lips. "To be honest, you're pretty amazing." A young girl, unfamiliar with the place, came to Shanghai. "It's not easy," Parker said, clinking his glass against mine. I emptied my glass. "Hey, don't try too hard. Being too strong is not good," Parker said. "Being too strong makes it hard to find a boyfriend." The person sitting across the round table scoffed, "Parker, have you had too much to drink? Our Lily has Henry, right?" Parker said, "Then hurry up and get married. What are you waiting for?" I teased him, "Are you eager to attend a wedding?" "Yeah, I am. I'm in a hurry. Hurry to pee." With that, he stood up, his face flushed, and staggered towards the restroom. The person beside him moved his chair aside, only to find a bottle of erguotu, a type of Chinese liquor, underneath, saying, "No wonder." I was also puzzled. When did he add more alcohol for himself, and I didn't notice it at all? That day, everyone drank a bit too much, and as we dispersed, our steps began to waver. Standing at the entrance of the hot pot restaurant bidding farewell, the atmosphere became sticky. In the midst of this, my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text message from Cora. "Dear, the company has sent me to Shanghai for 3 months. We'll be able to meet soon." I could almost imagine her excited expression. "Promotion? When are you coming?" I replied. "Why does it seem like you're not very welcoming? I'm here to supervise your work, and your love life, haha." Love life. I don't know where this sudden burst of courage came from, perhaps influenced by Parker's words or maybe by the lure of alcohol. In any case, I hailed a taxi and went straight to Henry's place. I had only been to Henry's place once, relying solely on memory to find the entrance. I rang the doorbell, but after a long time, no one answered. I thought I might have the wrong address. Just as I was about to leave with a heavy heart, the door opened. However, the person inside made me freeze. Cora, wearing men's pajamas, holding onto the doorknob, smiled charmingly. "How did you guess I live here?" I stood there, unable to react, and she grabbed my arm, pulling me into the house. The room was clean, soft yellow light gently covering everything. Leftover food was scattered on the table, along with 2 pairs of untidy bowls and chopsticks. I looked at her with confusion. With an air of a hostess, Cora piled up the magazines scattered on the sofa onto the coffee table, saying, "Come and sit. What would you like to drink? Tea or coffee?" I stood there motionless, my thoughts in disarray. Cora smiled, about to say something when suddenly, a vibrating sound came from outside the door. 2 pure white Samoyeds rushed over, barking incessantly at the unfamiliar person. One of them almost leaped towards me. "King, little king, stop barking." Cora scolded. "Why is the door not closed?" Henry said as he walked into the living room, and seeing me, his face froze. "Why did you come?" I felt numb all over and asked, "Henry, can you explain this to me?" His lips stammered for a moment, then he turned to Cora and said, "Take the dogs to the balcony, I'll talk to her outside for a few minutes." Why explain? What is there that I can't hear? Or is there something you two don't want me to see? Cora suddenly dropped her gentle facade, her voice turning sharp. "Or, do you have something behind my back?" Henry glanced at her but remained silent. Cora suddenly turned her face towards me, confronting me. "Lily, you're really hypocritical." She reached out and pushed me abruptly, saying, "Didn't you say that you and Henry aren't in that kind of relationship? Didn't you ask me to help you clarify the rumors? It was me who pitted you and let Henry bring you to Shanghai in the first place." I looked at Henry, who turned his face away, intentionally avoiding my gaze. Lily, are you treating me like a fool? Cora's voice grew even louder, almost breaking. Her sharp voice and terrifying face made me feel utterly unfamiliar. I felt as if my throat was blocked, unable to utter a single word. She became furious. Why the hell aren't you saying anything? What are you pretending to be mute for? Her forceful manner seemed a bit exaggerated, and after a few words, she was about to rush over and hit me. Henry pulled her back, and she stumbled, hitting the corner of the table. You should go back first, we'll talk tomorrow. Henry couldn't bring himself to look at me, as if talking to the air. His expressionless face pierced through me, and I felt as if thousands of needles were pricking my heart. My hands and feet turned ice cold, and I couldn't stop trembling all over. Go where? Suddenly, Cora had a bowl in her hand and threw it directly at me. It whizzed past my ear and crashed on the floor with a shattering sound. Shards of the porcelain bowl splintered and scattered everywhere. You're bleeding, Henry said. I looked down and realized my shin was cut by the shards. I grabbed a handful of tissues from the coffee table to wipe the wound. Henry took disinfectant from the TV cabinet, intending to help clean the cut. As his breath drew near, I felt a spasm in my stomach, almost making me nauseous. I straightened up, exerting all my strength, and pushed him away. Henry was pushed back repeatedly. What are you doing? Cora rushed to help him. I couldn't restrain the churning in my stomach any longer, almost fleeing from their love nest. The hot air outside the corridor descended onto my neck, swiftly turning into sweat. It clung to my skin, sticking to my clothes and hair, making me feel itchy and stinging. I rushed to the flower bed, vomiting until my stomach was empty. The nearby pharmacy still had its lights on. The cashier auntie, responsible for the cash register, was very friendly. Young lady, what do you want to buy? Disinfectant, I said. Just disinfectant? Do you need cotton balls? She asked. Oh, yes. She took the medicine from the shelf and gently placed it in my hands. I knew she was observing me. I paid and left the pharmacy, sitting on the curb near the door to tend to my wound. Need help? The pharmacy auntie, who had somehow appeared behind me, asked. Before I could answer, she snatched the disinfectant from my hand, skillfully unscrewed the cap, and said, such a beautiful pair of legs, dear. Leaving a scar wouldn't be good. You'll still want to wear beautiful dresses in the future. My nose tingled, and tears threatened to spill from my eyes. The pharmacy auntie, while tending to my wound, chattered away, asking where I was from, why I hadn't gone home so late, and if I had encountered any troubles. I kept my head low, answering in a buzzing voice. In my memory, my mom had never been this kind to me. Henry's performance within the group, along with my promotion, helped him gain control of the new brand. At that time, Henry seemed to be thriving both in his career and love life. In the spring of 2005, he married Cora, and he generously distributed wedding candies to everyone in the company, even the janitors. I tossed the wedding candies on my desk to the new assistant. She asked, puzzled, aren't you taking some good luck? Bad luck, I replied. After that, whenever I encountered Henry in the workplace, he remained friendly, just like before. However, he never mentioned the phrase, we'll talk tomorrow again. Several times, I couldn't help but want to ask him why he did what he did. But in the end, I would still feel that perhaps I wasn't worth being loved. Growing up among 7 siblings, I had never truly felt loved. My birth's sole purpose was to earn money for the family. Fortunately, I didn't ask for much, and that value was enough to support me. After Henry's wedding, some colleagues who attended the ceremony returned to the office and vividly recounted the event. They said Henry shed tears of gratitude during the wedding, thanking the bride at length. A Beijing-only child was willing to wait for him for 7 years and gave up her career in Beijing for him. I counted on my fingers, silently laughing. Once during a meeting with Violet, as we chatted, she suddenly changed the topic, saying, men say they want their partners to be smart and capable. However, when these women achieve even a bit more than them, they change direction, seeking someone more vulnerable to fill their empty pride. I stared at her in astonishment. In her usual proud expression, a trace of mockery appeared. I'm divorced. I'm free from today onwards, she said. I blurted out, congratulations. I don't know when, but I had silently joined her camp. Could this be what they call, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? I chuckled self-mockingly. After all, I was now a pawn abandoned by Henry. Moreover, after spending time with Violet, I gradually realized she wasn't as detestable as I thought, and she even displayed some courage in the workplace. In the middle of 2005, The major brands of the group were doing well, expanding their business to other provinces. The Jiangsu-Zhejiang region was a crucial area for the group to conquer. The choice for the East China regional director was first considered for internal promotion within the company. An internal job competition notice was issued by the group, allowing recommendations from others or self-application. In a few days, news of Henry participating in the competition for the regional director spread throughout the company. With 2 excellent brands in his hands, everyone thought he had a surefire chance. Once, while visiting a competitor's store, I happened to meet Henry as I was leaving. He was bidding farewell to someone. Seeing me, he clearly showed embarrassment and panic. "Wanna chat?" he asked me. We sat on the chairs outside Starbucks, and he ordered me a latte. At that time, coffee was still a luxury for me. I stared at the pricey cup of coffee, lost in thought for a while. "Not drinking?" he asked. "Not used to it," I said. "Give it a try." "How would you know if you don't?" He spoke with the same tone as before, as if nothing had happened. I looked at him, sarcastically asking, "Do I need to congratulate you on your imminent promotion to regional director?" He put down his coffee cup, glanced at me, turned his head away, and chuckled. "Do you really think I need to compete for this position? How I got to where I am today, you should understand better than anyone. I thought you would be the one who understands me the most. Do you really believe I need to prepare a presentation, rehearse speeches, and compete with those inexperienced kids for such a position? Your vision is still too short-sighted, too limited to this small territory." He wore an enigmatic smile. One must broaden their perspective. After saying that, he lit a cigarette, and soon a piece of ash fell off as he flicked it on the side of the chair. His face was close, familiar yet strangely unfamiliar. This realization shocked me. Had he changed, or was he always like this, and I never saw it clearly? Suddenly, everything seemed dull, as if a musty odor had been detected from those past events, making me nauseous. "I'll be leaving now." With that, I immediately stood up. He looked surprised, as if he wanted to stop me but swallowed his words. In the middle of the night, my stomachache flared up again. I took some medicine, held my stomach, and sat on the balcony basking in the moonlight. Scenes from the daytime kept replaying in my mind. I suddenly felt that Henry's visit to the store was very suspicious. Both brands in his hands were mid to high-end, and they were not present in that mall. Upon careful recollection, the person I encountered talking to Henry during the day seemed very familiar, but I couldn't recall where I had seen them before. The stomachache made my brain more alert than ever. Intuition told me that this person was not ordinary. I asked Violet, "Has there been a lot of movement in the design department recently?" She asked cautiously, "What's going on?" I couldn't share my unconfirmed suspicions with her until similar styles appeared on the shelves of our competitor's store. Violet approached me voluntarily to inquire about it. I checked the files of the designers with the HR department. Recently, there has been frequent movement among the designers, and most of them have gone to our competitor's company. She asked me, "Did you find out something earlier?" I then informed her about the incident with Henry the first encountered earlier. The person talking to Henry, if I remember correctly, should be a designer who used to work under Mu Chong. "He's helping the competitor poach our own people," Violet tutade. In mid-September, another year's Mid-Autumn Festival arrived, and the selection for the regional director was finalized. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Henry did not win. Not only did he not win, but by the end of September, the company suddenly announced that they would not renew his contract. The news about Henry turning into a corporate spy spread like wildfire within the company, becoming widely known. It was this incident of design leaks that drew the company's attention. The investigation revealed that more than half a year ago, Henry had been in close contact with the boss of the competitor company and had started collaborating privately. At the same time, I received a transfer notice. The group transferred me to Suzhou to be a city manager. "Congratulations," Violet said to me. To thank her, I invited her to dinner. "I get it, I won't eat," she said, claiming her rightful credit. "Do well." As luck would have it, I and Henry left the Shanghai company on the same day. I hurried to catch the high-speed train from Shanghai to Suzhou. Just before boarding the train, I received a text message from Henry. "Congratulations." I promptly moved the message to the trash. I no longer needed such cheap congratulations. The new office was clean and tidy, and the faces inside were unfamiliar and young. All of this made my blood boil, and I felt full of energy. The job of a city manager was busier than before, with never-ending tasks and numerous problems to solve, both trivial and complex. Yet, I never felt tired. In a year, I brought Suzhou's sales and profits to second place nationally. The group then successively handed over nearby cities, Changzhou, Wuxi, and Zhenjiang, to me. At the end of 2009, there was a rotation of the East China Regional Director, and the company issued a job competition notice as usual. I hardly hesitated and submitted a self-recommendation to the group. In the spring of the next year, I was formally appointed as the East China Regional Director. At the same time, the group smoothly went public, and I obtained a portion of the company's stocks. Over these years, I shuttled from one place to another, between stores and offices, between cities. Sometimes, I felt like a dandelion that could fly away with a gust of wind, drifting everywhere. At the end of 2007, I bought a house and settled down in Suzhou, finally providing a landing place for the drifting dandelion. I still remember the day I got the house. I sat in the spacious unfinished room until the moon rose. Like many years ago, it was a night with a full moon. Moonlight spilled into the empty house, half of the wall bathed in moonlight and the other half in shadows. Work calls kept coming, one after another. To confirm some information, I accidentally clicked into the trash bin and saw Henry's "Congratulations." After that, I never saw Henry and Cora again. Someone gossiped about their movements, saying Henry eventually followed Cora back to Beijing and joined a new company. Perhaps 2 years ago, Henry repeated the same mistake as before, thinking it would be forgiven this time. However, he was caught by the other party and ended up in prison. Cora had to go back to work, but she could never return to her previous position. Randomly recalling what Violet had said, relying on oneself is more secure. I leaned against the wall, facing the moonlight that drenched me. In my heart was an unprecedented calmness. I never stopped my own footsteps.